is different than push-ups, elbows in. Okay? They work different muscles. So push-up, elbows out. The power phase is when you push up off the ground. So that range of motion at the shoulder joint is called what? Horizontal adduction. And then if you were doing the second phase of this motion, where you were bringing your nose back down to the ground, what is that shoulder joint motion? Horizontal AB, it's eccentric. So the concentric phase, you would list pectoralis major upper and lower, anterior deltoid and coracobrachialis. Please note that I am making distinctions between the upper and lower, and I need you to do that as well. So make sure you're saying pectoralis major upper and lower, pectoralis major upper, pectoralis major lower, anterior deltoid, posterior deltoid, those separate. The shoulder girdle, when you do horizontal adduction concentrically, does abduction or protraction concentrically. So as you do this motion, the scapula does abduction or protraction. If it's concentric here, it's concentric here. You would then list your two abductors. Then when you're doing the eccentric phase of this, which the lab didn't ask you to do, when you were doing eccentric horizontal abduction, you would be doing eccentric adduction. But the muscles would be the same. Now, if you were doing this push-up with your elbows in, how would that change? What motion is this at the shoulder joint? Extension. And what motion is this? Flexion. What type of contraction is this? Eccentric. So you're doing extension eccentrically, so what muscle group would you list? Flexors. And then you're doing this. Flexion concentrically, so you list the flexors. Now with this, when you're doing flexion and extension, when you're doing the concentric phase of doing flexion, what two motions are accompanied by the shoulder girdle? When you do flexion, what does your shoulder girdle do? Upward rotation and elevation. If humerus moves up, shoulder girdle needs to move up. So flexion and abduction have the same motions, and extension and adduction have the same motions. When you move up, it does two things up. When you move down, it does two things to move you down. Okay? So that would just be the only difference between the push-up is that you have to be able to analyze elbows in and elbows out. So that just means you need to know all the muscles anyway. So should be easy just to tack that one on.
Yeah.
Well, you had to do it here. It's the same thing. When you're doing a pull-up with your elbows in, what is that? What motion is that? Extension. Extension. It's elbow flexion. That's what gets tricky sometimes. The elbow is flexing, but the shoulder is extending. And then as you came back up, what are you doing with the shoulder joint? Flexing. So when you do concentric extension, these are the four muscles that I need you to know: latissimus dorsi and teres major, and then lower pectoralis major, as well as posterior deltoid. And when you do extension, which is a downward trajectory of the humerus, you get two downward motions of the scapula: downward rotation and depression, concentrically. Now, if you were doing this pull-up with your elbows out, what would that change? Let's do it like this. Your hands are here, this is the bar. I'm going to pull myself up to it. What motion did that now become? Abduction. And then what would this be? Abduction eccentrically. Changes them. Changes the motion. But you have to know the muscles anyway, so it should be easy. Just tack that one on. If you can identify the motion and the contraction type, and then you know